Good afternoon, my friends. Thank you for joining us for one more session of Kardec After Lunch, hosted by Kardec Radio. Please download the app and listen to Kardec Radio programs and podcasts. Feel free to send questions to Kardec Radio's Twitter account. And remember that all of this work is done by volunteers, but there are costs associated with web and app hosting, along with broadcast and publishing. So if you're able to, please be kind and donate so this work of love may continue for many years to come. God bless. Um, so Kardec After Lunch is part of spiritismstudy.org initiatives. Of course, our main initiative is to incentivize, to enable the active study of Spiritism doctrine one-on-one. We have volunteers who donate time and their knowledge, and we pair them up with those people who like to learn more about Spiritism, and perhaps in a more intensive way, rather than just once a week at your local Spiritist society, for example. The initiative we have is the study aid for the Spirits book to be used by study groups. It was we used the permission of Kardecpedia as a translation. And what we did is we remove all the answers of the Spirits book and many of the sections which are not question and answer type to make it really slim and to invite the active thinking of the participants. So, because let's say you can't cheat, you can't just read the question and look at the answer. There are no answers. You have to discuss amongst yourselves and see if your thinking, your line of thinking, is in line with what the Spirit said. So the leader of the group should be well versed in it, in the doctrine, and of course have a full copy of the Spirit's book. And those are free of charge. If you'd like to know more about it, if you'd like to perhaps get an evaluation copy for your study group, please send us a line, and we'll do what's possible to send a few copies. Okay. Um, Additionally, they are hardcover and should last for many, many years. If you happen to have this edition, that's what we're going to be reading today. I suggest you follow along. This is the Medium's book. And if you have this edition, you can open it up on page number 99. We're talking about intelligent manifestations. If you don't have the book, you can go over to kardecpedia.com and open up the book that way. So, and all this that we do, it's very short. It's a little reading and commentary. It's meant to entice you, expose you to a work of Kardec that you may be unfamiliar with, but it's really to get you going, to publicize our other initiatives. But we do it during the day. And that way, if you're able to catch this video live, perhaps when the opportunity presents itself for you to put some of this wisdom, in action, maybe you have the clarity of thought, the presence of mind to do so. And because really that's what is important to me, is for us to apply the doctrine to reorient thoughts, words, and actions in our daily lives. Because it's easy being a spiritist at the Spiritist Center. It's a whole different thing being a spiritist out there. But let's start. So chapter 3, Intelligent Manifestations. Number 65. Regarding the incidents that we have just examined, there is nothing in them that necessarily reveals the involvement of some hidden power. Such effects might be explained perfectly well as being the action of some kind of electric or magnetic current, or some kind of fluid. This was, in fact, the first solution proposed for the phenomena, and it could certainly have passed as being very logical. The solution would have undoubtedly prevailed if there had not been other facts proving its insufficiency. These facts consisted in the evidence of intelligence displayed by the phenomena. In addition, since every intelligent effect must have an intelligent cause, it became obvious that, even accepting the possibility of electricity or some other fluid being involved, another cause was nevertheless present also. What could it be? What was this intelligence? This is what further observations reveal. So, as we study this and we go back to a few chapters, we realize that before this, we're talking about intelligent manifestations. Before this was just the physical phenomena, was just the movement of, most commonly was the table. Uh, and so there was no intelligence per se behind that. Uh, so once the phenomena actually, aside from the material effect, uh, he also brought intelligent messages, then um, Kardec interest was really picked, and that's how he decided to go after this new field of science, of research, of knowledge, with the tools he already had, which was of being a researcher and educator, right? So number 66. In order for a particular manifestation to show intelligence, it does not have to be convincing, clever, or wise. All that is required is for it to act freely and voluntarily, revealing an intention or corresponding to a thought. When we see a weather vane moving under the force of the wind, we know that it is only obeying a mechanical impulse, right? But if you were to recognize signs of intent in its movements, if it turned right or left and quickly or slowly in obedience to our orders, we would have to admit that it was not the weather vane itself that possessed intelligence, but rather that it was obeying our own intelligence. That is exactly what happened with the tables. See? So, the importance of collecting information, analyzing, and rationalizing what could be behind it. That's what Kardec did. Number 67. We have seen a table move, rise into the air and produce raps under the influence of one or several mediums. And the first intelligent effect observed was that he obeyed the orders given to it. Without moving about, the table alternatively stood on the legs that were indicated to it. Next, when it was square on the floor, it produced a certain number of raps in response to particular questions. So see, so this demonstrated intelligence. The movement by itself, without any coherence, without any rational intent, does not demonstrate intelligence. At other times and without anyone touching it, the table moved around the room by itself, going right or left, backward and forward, and executing the various maneuvers that the participants required of it. It was obvious that we could rule out all suspicion of fraud. We accepted the unquestionable fidelity of the participants because of their honorability and complete disinterestedness. So, um, another, I guess, favorable point in this is, if I'm not mistaken, all participants in this group knew each other and had to really trust each other. They knew not just from that group, but socially in other scenarios, even professional. We will later address the issue of fraud, against which it is prudent to guard oneself. So, of course, we cannot be at either extreme. We should not discount each and every phenomena because some have used it and take advantage of others, right? Just like there will be false Christ prophets. It's not because there will be false Christs and false prophets that there are no prophets and no Christs, right? And also, on the other hand, we should not believe that everyone is a prophet or a Christ. So Kardec and the spirits themselves continuously recommend us to have a develop a healthy level of skepticism that's based on your reality, on your knowledge and your level of development, so you can judge what you see, what you hear, what you read, in accordance to what you believe, right? So Continue, number 68. By means of wraps, mainly those produced within the wood itself, which we have already addressed, even more intelligent effects were observed, such as the imitation of the beating of drums, the discharge of muskets by a file or platoon, the firing of cannons, the rasping of a saw, the strike of a hammer, the rhythms of certain areas, etc. An entire vast field was therefore opening up to investigation. It was further reasoned that if there was in fact an invisible intelligence present, it might be able to respond to questions. And in fact, it really did respond with a yes or a no according to the number of agreed upon reps produced. Since these two responses were quite limiting, however, a system was established using a certain number of reps to correspond to each letter of the alphabet in order to form words and sentences. So most of you can already kind of imagine what's coming next, but what's very they're developing other systems to improve the speed and the accuracy of the communication. But one thing that is very common here in the United States, at least for example, the what's known as the Ouija board, right? Little board with the medium or the person medium eyes place his hands over a little tablet who has an indicator or a pointed end, and a tablet that, aside from having yes, no, maybe, like a whole bunch of other predetermined responses, it has the alphabet, it has numbers. So according to where the little pointed object goes to, it starts forming words. Unfortunately, one way or another, most uh, immediately relate this methodology or this instrument to the supernatural, and normally they also relate to evil or to horror movies or suspense or something like that. And as if it was exclusive to, and such is not the case. But let's continue. Number 69. Since these occurrences were being repeated at will by thousands of persons in every country, they could leave no doubt as to their intelligent nature. It was then that a new theory was devised for interpreting them, attributing the manifesting in intelligence to the medium, the observer, or even the participants. However, the difficulty was in explaining how this intelligence could be reflected within the table itself and be communicated by means of raps. Since the raps were not produced by the medium, then they must be produced somehow by thought. But for thought to somehow be able to produce such raps will be a more remarkable phenomenon than all the incidents that have been observed, right? So he's already trying to formulate ideas that could conceive theories that could explain what's going on. It did not take long for experience to show that this theory was unacceptable. In fact, the responses were very often shown to be completely opposite to what participants were thinking and beyond the scope of the medium's intellect. They were even given in languages unknown by the medium, or they pertain to facts unknown by any of the participants. Such examples are so numerous that it is almost impossible for anyone to be involved with spirit communications without having witnessed them many times. We shall cite only one example which was related to us by an eyewitness. And sorry to leave this little cliffhanger, if you will, but we reached the end of our time. But I'd like to remind you that the Spiritism study have many other initiatives that pertain to the active and engaged study of the Spiritist doctrine. So please feel free to use our services. They are always free and always will be, even our study aid. In the meantime, thank you for your participation. Thank you for your questions, suggestions, commentaries, and thank you for Kardec Radio for hosting us. Until next time, Godspeed to all.